Welcome to episode 41 of the Daily Traders podcast. In today's episode, we interview Brian Haugli. Brian is the CEO of SideChannel, which is a publicly traded cybersecurity company. Today's episode is fantastic for any aspiring entrepreneur. Brian talks about how to turn what you love into a marketable company, because that's what he did. He talks about the world of cybersecurity and managing a 50-person team, and what goes into running a publicly traded company. Also, make sure you stick to the end because Brian talks about the cybersecurity risks of TikTok that you've been seeing all in the news. Brian has talked about this on Fox News and other major news outlets. Today's episode was absolutely phenomenal. I got a ton of value out of it. I hope you guys do as well. And with that said, let's get right into the episode.
All right, so Brian, we're glad to have you. Tell us a bit about your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. From like an entrepreneurial standpoint and like what kind of setting out and like building something, honest to God, didn't plan on it. Like, I've always been a practitioner. I've always worked within the cybersecurity space as, either an employee working in somebody else's organizations, helping them build, systems, helping them build programs, services, things like that, and now products. But, honestly, if you would have asked 18-year-old me or even 15-year-old me, do you want to run your own business at some point? I would have said no. Like, I have no interest in doing that. Like, I really like what I do, but like, I don't even know anything about like how to run a business or any of that, right? Like, I didn't start college till I was 22. Like, I, got my bachelor's and that was it. Like, I don't have an MBA. I was never in a sales position, right? Before I started this company, I was really good at being able to talk to people about, ideas and getting technical concepts across to people who didn't have technical backgrounds. But I never sold anything. I never like got to the point where I was trying to like get a meeting and like close a deal, right?
Yeah.
Until April of 2019 when I launched SideChannel full time. And I think the differentiator and like what it made, at first it was very scary, right? You're just like, I don't have that background, but I know the market needs what we're doing. I knew that. I had that theory and I had that passion that like if I could bring what I did inside of larger enterprises and inside of DoD, could I bring that into middle market and startups? But I didn't know how to sell it. So I was like, all right, well, you know what? Let me work with the tools I got. And that is, let me talk to people about risk. Let me talk to people about, finding out what their real issues are. Let me just try to be a good consultant. And honestly, that's all it needed to be. Like, it was authentic. I wasn't trying to like schmooze. I wasn't trying to like wheel and deal. It was just, let me be a good consultant. Let me listen to what your problems are. Let me figure out if I have the solutions or the capabilities to solve those problems. And if you hire me, great, we'll move on. And then that's what happened. And it was just like one after another and client after client and growing until the point where you're like, hey, I can't keep building this business and run it at the same time. And then you start going, okay, well, everything's a system. Like, that's just how I think. Like, everything is a system to me. So why don't I just bring in somebody and have him start working on a couple clients? And then I can keep working on these. And then I'll figure out how to do marketing. I'll start to figure out how to do sales and like expand. And this was like how I built this company. And it was just a series of systems and just managing a team. Like, that was it. I kind of looked at it like, how would I manage my own team? And I've managed teams of hundreds of people. I've managed teams of 2 people, right? Like, and everything really in between. And it was just, how can I effectively manage? Good. You guys are going to deliver to these clients. You're going to deliver to these clients. Okay. You're my marketing person. I need you to go do this, right? Like, you're my legal person. I need this out of you. And it was just managing relationships and growing a company that way. So, I came at it from a very interesting approach, but I'll tell you, it's worked. To where we are now, it's, I must have done something right.
Hey guys, I have to say this real quick. We are not financial advisors, which means we cannot give any financial advice. Check out the disclaimer. It is in the description below. Later in the episode, let's definitely talk more about like where you guys SideChannel is now as a company, but let's rewind a little bit for some context because growing up, you weren't the kid that was, out playing baseball in the yard. You were kind of growing up in a time where computers were starting to become relevant, and your uncle, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of got you into that computer space. And just as a kid, you just like took right to it and programmed.
Yeah. So start. Yeah, I'm 43. I turned 43 next week. So we're in April.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. So I was born in 1980, right? And that whole time when you look at like anybody born between like 78 and 82 is this time in between, I guess they call it kind of like Gen X and millennials, right?
Yeah.
The best way to characterize it is this: like I had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. And computers really were starting to become pervasive in the home. They had kind of just really started taking over being like really part of, office, but like they started really kind of getting into the home in like the mid 80s. And my uncle, who worked in a lot of really crazy things, just super smart guy, was the one who, basically gave my dad my first computer and said, "Give this to Brian. This thing's the future." Like my dad was like, "The thing that we have in the office, like what's he gonna do with this?" And he's like, "Trust me, like when he comes over to the house all the time, like I'm showing him this stuff." My cousin David was very much into this too, and he was that guy was brilliant, still is brilliant. And yeah, it was just kind of getting into it at a very young age and really understanding, like again, like, oh, this is a system. Like it's a series of controls and instructions, and if you it's kind of like a game. Like if you play the game right, you know how the outcome should favor you, right? And then it's also like a game. If you figure out kind of ways around stuff, you can break it, right? And you can make it do things that it didn't intend. And that was where I think, changed from being like, oh, I'm going to build computer systems and I'm going to build things around what computers can do, to I'm going to figure out what people didn't think they could do, and I'm going to prove that they can do it. And like that's really how I got into cybersecurity, which was, oh, I'm pretty sure I can figure out how to break this thing and make it do something that nobody intended, right? Let's see where it goes. So
it's funny, you kind of started like as the criminal and then became the lawyer, like the police officer.
Yeah, I was an ethical hacker early in my career. I was a pen tester, which is like a nice way of saying that companies used to pay me and my company, the company I worked for at the time, they paid us to break into their company to show them how we did it.
Yeah. So you loved doing, you loved computers, and then all of a sudden you kind of grew this passion for like breaking systems. And so it's something like you actually enjoyed doing. So it's cool how you turned that into an actual career now, like a side channel, which is a really large company. So how do you know like when you love something and like how like to monetize it? Because I love surfing, but like how am I gonna make money from surfing? Like there's certain things that like are a marketable asset that you can use to make money.
Right.
Your dad had a quote. What was it?
Yeah, when I left when I was 18 after high school, because I didn't go to college right after high school, he was like, find something you love to do and then find some asshole to pay you to do it.
Yeah.
That has stuck with me forever. And it's funny, I just told him that, because I've done quite a bit of like media and podcasts and such. And I told him that, like, I was like, I quote you a lot on these things, because when people always ask me like, how'd I get into it? And he was like, he laughed and he was like, oh my God, I actually totally forgot that I told you that. I was like, yeah, that was kind of like your level of advice giving, but yes, that was it. It's you have to look, sports is sports, man. Like, if you've got a great jump shot, try to go for the NBA. Like that's how you're going to monetize that. But if you don't, and you still love basketball, like teach basketball, sell basketball paraphernalia, build something around what you do. Like I can't build a computer, right? Like I can't program like a circuit board, right? So like that's the jump shot, right? In computers is like your ability to work at that level. Mm-hmm. But I can take something that's already created and built and make it better. I can innovate. I can't invent. That's kind of how I've always looked at it. I couldn't think about doing something I didn't love be my job and be the thing that I had to do every day and be happy and continue doing it. Like, I don't know how people do that, honestly. Like at some point you just have to be fed up with like, wow, this is not a career. This is a job. And I don't even like the work I'm doing as a job. Like this sucks. I should do something else with my life.
I think that's great advice as far as finding what you love and turning into like a marketable business, because I mean, the amount of involvement and hours you put into your company, it's like if you didn't love what you're doing, maybe in the start, like you could have just overpowered with like grit, like, okay, I'm going to make money with this. But at some point, it's like that, that every single day, year after year process of working on this one thing. If you really don't love it, it's like, how are you going to keep pushing forward?
Yeah, innovation comes from passion. Like I literally wake up every day happy that I'm going to go work on what I get to work on. One, like, I don't really answer to anybody because I'm the CEO. I do have a board, I have shareholders, but like, I'm running the company, right? So one, I like that. Like, I like that type of environment because I think I have pretty good ideas and I like to not have anything stand in the way of me being able to go try them out and implement them. And not all the ideas are right. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I'm perfect. Like, I'm not saying that, but I don't have any barriers from being able to bring my ideas to fruition. The other piece is, it gets me out of bed in the morning. It keeps me up at night. Like, if I didn't have that type of passion, I wouldn't be trying to innovate. I would just, be coin operated, and I would just hope that this thing grows and I can hire a team and they do well and I can retire. But you ask anybody on my team, like, I'm involved. I'm not micromanaging, but I'm constantly like, hey, what if we did this? I think the market wants this. I think startups at the Series A level or Series B level are looking for this type of capability and they're able to afford it. What if we built that? What if we did that? Like, I love getting involved at that level and being able to bring that to customers. And then honestly, that passion comes through. Like, I am the number one salesperson in my company and I have a 7-person sales team. They are literally all competing with me to try to beat me on setting appointments, closing deals. Like, I have battles with like the sales team underneath my SVP about like who can close more deals, like him and his team or me. And like right now I'm beating out their SDRs on like booking meetings and appointments just because I'm like I love a challenge, and why not?
That. Yeah, you're still actively in the trenches, and that's so important. Like when it comes to setting company culture, which is obviously set at the top, and so kind of explaining, how you go about setting that culture is interesting because from my perspective, I've got a couple employees, right, and it's something that I'm working on and managing. How many employees are you working with right now? How many people are working under you?
I have 8 direct reports, but they're all like executive leaders. But we have like 46 people in the company right now, I think, and growing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that scale, and you're obviously still growing. That's crazy. So how do you go about, trusting that everyone's getting their jobs done when you can't go about overseeing everyone? That I see is maybe a foreseeable struggle or something I'm going to deal with growing this company on my own. And sure, if other people listening to this podcast hopefully will have their own companies in the future too. So I think any advice along, managing someone who works for you, making sure they're actually getting done what you're paying them to do is super valuable.
You have to incentivize people differently. And there's no cookie cutter way of being like the two of you probably aren't incentivized the same way, right? You're not incentivized the way that I am, right? Like I will take more equity in something than cash because I know what I'm going to build has a way better exponential payout based on equity than just giving me cash now, right? Like a lot of people think equity is cheap because it's on paper, it doesn't cost anything, there's no effect of your burn. But equity is actually a lot more expensive, especially if you got something that's going to grow. So like something that's worth $1 today could be worth $50 tomorrow in equity versus $1 cash is $1 cash. You're done. So you have to figure out what the incentive is for people. Is it culture? Is it time off? Is it work-life balance? Do people like to work from noon until 8 at night? Do people like to work 9 until 5? Like figure that out. Do they want benefits? Do they want to travel? Do they not want to travel? You really got to like hone in on each of them. Like each of my 8 reports, like I've got 3 guys who oversee all delivery, right? And they're all executives, like executive level. Like I trust them. They're all incentivized by overall growth and success of the company, right? So their predominant amount of their wealth will be generated from the company's success. So they're thinking, hey, if I do well, if I expand inside of clients, if I get new clients, if I help support the team, the company do well, I'll do well. I've got a marketing director. I got a sales director, right? Sales director now is sales are predominantly, focused around commission, not necessarily company growth, right? So they're wondering like, hey, if I close this big deal, how much of that deal do I get? They're incentivized to close big deals, big profitable deals. Marketing is kind of like that weird space. Like we need it, but how do you quantify like if the website is good and that's bringing people in, right? So that's maybe something that's more just centered around cash and work style and lifestyle balance and the ability to be creative, right? And so you have to kind of figure all these different things out, right? With people, you got to, what makes you tick? Like why are you getting up in the morning? Your job, Mark, is going to be figuring that out, but then you've got to like relay your passion. You have to make your vision their vision, right? Like as a leader, you have got to get people to just completely buy into why you are so excited to be leading and running this company.
Yeah.
That is, you are number one cheerleader as the CEO. You're also in charge of all of HR and everything else, but and everything that is wrong is your fault. Everything that is right about the company is the company's success and everything else. But your job is to be number one cheerleader. Like, spend a lot of time with everybody you can. Find out what makes them tick, what works for them, why do they like working here, why are they thinking about leaving, what could you do to make them better, what could you work for them. Like Gary Vaynerchuk I'm a huge fan of Gary V and like his whole model for marketing and just some of his outreach. It's like, he's not the one who came up with it, but he says this quite a bit. It's like the CEO works for every employee. Like my job is to make sure every employee likes to work and do what we're doing, because I'm not doing their job. I'm setting the vision. My job is to make sure that they align and believe in the vision. If no one in your company is doing that, you are the only one that believes in the vision. You're the only one who's going to try to make it happen. Everyone else is just working for a paycheck.
That's interesting. I've loved your business philosophy. And as far as I've seen, Side Channel is wildly successful. And you didn't go to school. You didn't get your MBA. You went for computer science, right?
Yeah, I went to a state school in New York inside the SUNY system. And it was a bachelor's in network administration. So basically, like, how do you set up computer networks and, work in like large scale kind of like just systems administration and all that. Yeah.
So how did you learn, how to like manage people and employees, grow? I mean, as far as owning a publicly traded company, it's probably the most complex corporate structure out there. Like, how did you learn all this stuff? I mean, even like for me, thinking about taking a company public, my brain is just like scrambled. So you must have had, whether it's board of directors come on board who've done it before, or some like business mentors, because I think a lot of people think that, in order to be the CEO of a really large company, you need to have a business degree. But you're a very clear example of that's actually not the case. You just have to care about what the product is or the service.
I believe a lot in the fact that leaders are born. And I can credit three things, right? My father, he was in the military, and he kind of instilled kind of the thinking about how to take someone who's got innate leadership qualities and actually make them work. Like, you could be a born great leader, but never use your skills. You won't do very well. If you're never put in a position to use your skills, you won't know if you're good at it. But honest to God, the Boy Scouts taught me so much, right? Like, I made Eagle, I was in that, like, I led my troop, I led my platoons. I was just always very like, look, this is what we need to do. This is how we do it. And I was fair, right? Like, that structure. From there, going into the military, like, it's kind of straightforward, but like, you again apply leadership qualities to where you need to, to where you are. And that just translated to business, like knowing how to motivate teams, knowing how to talk to people, right? Just being an empathetic person, right? Like, listening to people's problems and not waiting for your turn to speak. Like, getting to really understand, like, again, like, what makes you tick? Like, why are you on this team? Why do you want to be on this team? Like, you saw something about what we were doing. You joined. I didn't force you. I made you an offer. You're the one who made the decision to join this. What was that? What was that thing that made you want to join me on this mission? Whether it was, in the military company or what we're doing now, there was something that you saw. Tell me what that is. And now let me figure out how to make sure that we can make that a reality. And that's the thing you got to like hone in on with folks, is like, get that hook. And I'm not saying like exploit it. Like, don't be, this is not like taking advantage of something. Like, this is just genuinely understanding, like, why do you want to be part of what we're doing here? And if you can understand that out of your employee base, you will create so much better of a culture and organization, because now it's not just me with a vision. These people saw the vision and they're bringing their input to it, and that's now shaping that vision into a reality.
I like it. So let's talk about, I want to kind of rewind and talk about deals. I don't know how much you can talk about as far as money, but I know that is interesting for a lot of people, kind of throwing out some numbers. When you say closing a big deal, what is a big deal?
So like right now we're publicly traded. We just closed our quarter, so I can't discuss a lot. Our next 10Q will be filed in mid-May, as required. But essentially, we're around a $5.5 million trailing 12-month revenue company. We've experienced 45% year-over-year growth. Earlier years, we had 75% year-over-year growth, just significant. And we're on track to kind of continue this momentum. So for me, that's kind of big. We're still in the millions. We're not in the billions, but hey,
That's really cool.
Everybody's got different scale.
Let's talk a little bit more about how SideChannel came to be, because it initially was this private company, and then you did what's called a reverse takeover. Do you want to explain what that is from a place of experience to those who
Yeah. Let me I forgot to kind of answer Mark's question though, like deal size. So right now I think big deal sizes are like really big deal sizes would be between $500,000 and $1 million annual revenue, like on a deal size. I think a predominant amount of the deals that you see that we talk about are in between the $250,000, $500,000, right? These are annual contracts, recurring revenue. We have a very relationship-based business, a lot more software because we developed our own software. And that'll actually kind of help me answer what's a reverse takeover, kind of like how does that play out? So we were privately held. We were an LLC. We were a limited liability corporation. I had 5 partners, myself being the largest. I owned like 71% of the LLC. I had a second partner that owned like 11%, and then the other 3 each owned about 6%. And then we were all just partnership. So it was pass through income, right? Like we just standard LLC structure. We reincorporated into a C Corp after the Jobs Act, like 20, who knows what, 2020, 2018. But basically like C Corp got taxed down from being like this 35% down to a 20%. We could retain earnings in the corporation. We didn't have to, and we could take dividends instead of salary. There's some really nice offsets to like all of that. There's some tax breaks and stuff. Corporate structures are really just kind of like, what do you want to take advantage of? That's really kind of all corporate structures matter. Like between choosing the state that you do it in or the actual structure you're in. And there's like a whole, I am not an expert on that. I know enough to like keep up with my accountant when he's telling me like we need to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, that sounds good. That's what you're telling me sounds like I'm not going to pay as much in taxes, and I'm totally in support of that idea. So let's go with that. As long as it's legal, let's do those things. Like I can keep up with them, but like I'm not. That's not my background. So what happened was we were this private entity, right? Profitable, revenue generating. I mean, everybody's happy. We got approached by this publicly traded company. And they weren't on like the NYSE or the New York Stock, the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. There are actually other exchanges in the US. There's other exchanges all around the world. Canada has an exchange. Japan has an exchange. Companies can list publicly on really just about anything. It just kind of matters on like what the qualifications are, right? So like some of them have different entrance requirements, right? So whatever. So so this OTC is called OTCQB listed company. They had some intellectual property and they had this product that they had been developing. They had some idle capital, about $3 million, $3.5 million, I think, in idle capital sitting in the bank. And they didn't have a good solid management and leadership structure. They had a board, a very like skeleton crew. And I think they were kind of thinking, listen, we're either going to fold this thing up and just close shop, or we got to find somebody to merge with. And there's actually a value to a public company itself. It's the value, I don't know what the actual values are, but it's, it could be valued, a non-revenue generating public company could just be valued at like $1 million to $5 million because it's publicly traded, right? It's that vehicle. And they were like, listen, the board said, listen, we like what you're doing over here. You're revenue generating, you're profitable. You have a great leadership team. And we're trying to think about what to go do. How about we figure out some type of a business combination? And we went through, all the due diligence. And basically what happened was, from an accounting standpoint, SideChannel took over the other public company. But from a legal standpoint, the other company took over SideChannel. So you have this merger, and we went through all this fun stuff with the SEC, because they don't see this a lot. But if anybody's familiar with like a SPAC, right? You basically have this large entity that kind of like attracted all of this investment that sits there and does nothing. And then like a private company backs into it. And then the SPAC becomes the new company with this investment already. An RTO, or reverse takeover, is basically the same concept without like just building an empty SPAC. It's an already existing company, and the takeover mechanism is very similar, but different. There's a lot of nuance into like the differences, but an RTO is what we did. And what happened was, the other company took over Side Channel. Side Channel ceased to exist as Side Channel. But because I became the largest shareholder of the other company through this merger, and the deal, which is all public information, the deal terms gave me special voting rights to control the board. So I immediately appointed a brand new board. I had that board appoint me the CEO. And then as soon as I did that, we changed the name of the company back to Side Channel and changed the ticker to SDCH. So I wasn't in control of my company for all of like 24 hours.
Wow.
So did maybe you can't talk about this? What was the previous board a little butthurt?
No. So I kept a couple of them. They were really solid practitioners, right, and experts. One of them was a CEO of another public company. One of them was a CPA and had like real world experience in the public markets. But I also know I was allowed to have a majority of the board. You don't need a huge board. You need about 5 people. 3 to 7. 7's pushing it, especially for a small company. You just don't need as many people, because remember, you have to pay these people too. So there's a cost. They're not bringing in revenue. You have to pay them. So there's a cost to, you have to give them equity. So I tried to keep the board small. So I appointed myself. Obviously, I'm the only non-independent director because I work for the company. So I'm not independent. But the rest of them now are the other 4 are all independent. We were able to attract the CFO who recently retired from another public company. He became the head of our audit committee. We were able to attract Debbie, who we actually just named as our chairperson. Do you know that? So she's the chairwoman of the board. Do you know that there are more men named John as directors of public companies than there are women as directors of public companies?
No.
Yeah.
What?
It's a wild fact.
Yeah, it's wild. So we're so happy we have Debbie. She's a retired after 35 years in the industry, predominantly at IBM. So she brings a tremendous amount of experience. She's now our chairperson. We also have Kevin Powers, who's the head of the master's program for cybersecurity at Boston College. So we bring some academic insight. We have Hugh, who's the audit, and then Anthony, who is he's the public company CEO, and then myself. So we've got a really great board, and they're all they get what we're doing, right? They get what we're after, and they fully supportive of the direction that we're going and what we're about to go do.
That's awesome. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying today's episode. I know I am. I just want to ask you guys, the viewers, a very simple favor. Could you please like and share this episode? It really, really helps us as far as engagement and allows us to keep producing quality episodes like you are watching right now. Also, Brian was generous enough to take time out of his day to come on our show and provide value for you guys. So we would greatly appreciate it if you could check out his company, Side Channel. The link to his website will be in the description below, and also his ticker symbol is SDCH if you want to go check it out.
All right, so we wanted to take a second to thank this week's sponsor, thedailytraders.com. Now, if you guys are interested in learning how to trade in the stock market, I'm actually going to be giving you access to copy my exact trades, as well as 30 plus videos breaking down my entire trading system. So I will put a link in the description below to my mentorship group. If you guys are interested, I'll have a discount code there, which will hopefully help you out. So go ahead, check that out, see if it's something you're interested in. And with that said, let's continue.
All right, back after a short break. We hope you guys are enjoying this episode so far. I thought it would be fun to talk about trading since we are a trading community, and we do have a vast majority or variety of guests coming on the podcast. And Brian obviously is, not in the trading space to my knowledge, but I thought I'd ask Brian, do you have any investments in the stock market? Have you traded before? Are you in any cryptocurrencies? What are your opinions, thoughts, and what's your activity look like from an investment standpoint in the markets?
Yeah, so I do. I used to be a lot more active years ago. 2016, 2017, I was a very active trader. But like first, I mean, if you don't, I know you have a younger audience, but do not discount the potential of a 401k and an IRA. Like the putting money into that early on is huge. Like I know I'm very happy and comfortable with where I'm going to be when I retire because of my 401k and like that thinking that I started doing when I was younger. Like I can't stress that enough. I met too many people who are just like, oh yeah, I don't need to do that yet. I'm like, yeah, you do. Like, yeah, you do. You need to start doing that now because you're gonna, you are gonna live a pretty long life. So you want to be able to get out, but don't discount that. Yeah. So 2016, 2017, I was like day trading options on margin pretty heavily for like a
No
couple
way.
of years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I got, and I'm not smart on like, like that side of things. Like I've never been to, like I learned it. Again, it was like another system. But like what I found was just how much people just have like FOMO on stuff and like the power of momentum trading. So I built a couple different like scripts and tools, and I honed in on a couple areas where I was just trying to keep pace on news and just kind of see how things are going. The biggest stuff was going into October of 2017 when Canada was legalizing marijuana. And if you back up to 2016 and you see my trades between mid 2016 through Q2 of 2017, that's where I made all my money because I was literally just like I was in on Tilray like early and low, and I sold just after they peaked
with
in
options
like
too.
September. What's that?
Wait, you were trading options on Tilray?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What were the percent return on those contracts? Do you remember?
I think I traded and moved somewhere around like 3.5 million on just trading cannabis stocks.
In
like 9 months.
3.5 million what?
Dollars. Yeah,
That's
I bought
impressive.
a really sweet sports car. I paid off my sister's college tuition, and she's a PhD and doctor in psychology. So I paid that off. Yeah, like I did really, really well. But like I thought I also, that was not like, I mean, I also had quite a significant amount of losses like anybody, like nothing's perfect. So like I could have done better, but that's what I escaped with. And it was like, all right, I tried to apply the same type of thinking to other areas and it didn't work. So, I never quite understood like how, like I get all the basic dynamics of like trading and like demand and all that. But like, man, there's some aspects in our market that are purely emotionally driven. And the second you think you figured out how people are going to act, you're wrong. It's so crazy. Because the whole space popped and just totally blew up 3 days before California legalized marijuana. Like you can see it, October of 2017. 3 days before, it just went poof, down, done, and it's like never really recovered.
That must have been an exciting day. What type of card did you get?
Yes, crazy. What card did you get?
I bought it was really nice and I restored it. It was a 2014, the 100-year anniversary edition of the Maserati Gran Turismo.
Ooh.
Oh,
that was fun. I just got rid of it though. I traded up to 2020 BMW M5 competition.
Oh, that's
nice.
fun. That's really cool.
All right, well, that's cool. I can't believe you were into trading. Why did you stop? Just because that kind of edge you found, the market conditions kind of aligned for you back in 2017, and then you just couldn't find anything that worked.
It was that, and just honestly the amount of time, like the energy that went into it, versus trying to, like I always knew that like was not something I was ever going to be good enough to be in to have as my job. Yep. Like, and I didn't have a passion around doing it. Like I liked what I was able to figure out and take advantage of it and figure some things, but like I was like, I'm not really that into this, that like I want to like do this as like a gig. And I always thought my longer term investments were, my portfolio was just better structured on like a longer term. And I think that was a time and place that I was able to capitalize on. Right. And like I've seen some other stuff with like other momentum trading, like around like, like I got in with like all those meme stocks. And again, it was almost the same kind of like momentum trading on stuff. Like people's emotions were driving certain stuff. And I was like, cool, I'm in and I'm out. Like I probably left money on the table, but it was a more conservative route and it worked out. but it just took so much time, and it just, again, it wasn't where my passion was. Like,
Yeah, you didn't love it.
I wanted to go work on this other stuff, and I just didn't have the time to do both. I was like, well, I know I'm good at this. I know I can build a business. I know I can go, on this path. I know I can be a practitioner. I'll stick over there. I had my fun, but I'm out. So long-term portfolio stuff, that's, it feels good for where I am now, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm married. I have a mortgage. I have a life. I have a daughter that I need to send to, college in like 3 years. Like, I'm not going to, do anything to like jeopardize that. And I was never
Sure.
playing with like, I was always playing with the house's money whenever I was doing it. Like, I always parlayed stuff in. Like, I would always do well and then take something back. But I never, you never play poker with your rent money, right? You just don't
Yeah.
do it, right? So
Good advice.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, so back to kind of like what you love doing, your passion. What do you? I think I've listened to another one of your podcasts, and you had some very interesting viewpoints on where cybersecurity is going in the future, as far as it becoming more prevalent as hackers become more advanced, and it becomes more of an imminent threat that's kind of recognized, because there's still people out there that see cybersecurity like, oh, that won't happen to me.
oh my
But
God, yeah.
as the industry grows, like from what you believe, it's gonna, people are gonna need it more and more into more in-depth programs, whatever you guys are offering. So what do you, as far as like, what do you view the future of cybersecurity, and also like the future of your company and growing it?
Yeah, I kind of joke that, if I wasn't running this company, I just step back into being a practitioner, like, I'll have a job for life. Like, this problem is not going away, right? The predominant amount of dependence on technology by our society today means technology is not going anywhere, right?
Mhm.
Couple that with the fact that people are the ones who build these systems. People are the one who code, and people are fallible, right? Nobody's perfect. So we create things that are imperfect. We also have a tendency to create things quickly because we want to get something out the door. We want to have operational efficiencies. So we take shortcuts. We have deadlines we have to meet, which means we don't always think about security, which is what introduces vulnerabilities that get exploited by bad guys.
Mhm.
That's why I feel pretty confident, unfortunately, that my career and my sector is going to exist for a very long time. I wish it didn't. Honestly, like, if we just had good architectural design and engineering for systems and computers and networks, I shouldn't have a job. But I do, and I will.
Mhm.
This is there's a lot of different factors into like why this will continue. It's military, economic, or social reasons, right? These three things. You've got countries that have military aspects of dominating the rest of the world. They're going to use cyber, right? Air, water, land, right? Like, cyber is like the new plane to be able to operate on, right? And what's
Yeah.
crazy is there are no boundaries. You can literally go anywhere. Economic reasons. You've got countries that are bent on dominating for economic reasons. They will use networks and systems and technology to make that come true. And then you just have social reasons. You've got activism. You've got political, right? There's tons of stuff. Like, and I won't sit here and bore you with examples because we've all seen it. You've seen all three of those reasons as to like why bad things happen. The problem is not that those bad things happen. Crime exists, right? Crime is down because society puts police in place, puts rules in place, puts protections and deterrence in place. People acknowledge that crime exists and is bad for them. So therefore they do something about it. People don't do the same thing with cybersecurity. They don't look at risks and think, oh, that could happen to me. And a lot of it is because it operates on a logical plane, right? I can physically touch my phone. Can you touch a database?
No.
That's where people have the hardest time. I can see somebody stealing my phone. If somebody walked in my office now and stole this, I would know who they are. I could see them.
Mhm.
And the phone, this is the only one like it, and this one is mine. There's a nice little reference to a really old movie. This is it.
Mhm.
There is not a clone of this that also exists somewhere in Europe that does exactly like this. There's another model like this. It can do the same things, but it is not this one. And that's what happens with data. So people are like, oh, well, somebody stole the data. Yes, they have your data, an exact copy of that exact thing, a clone somewhere else that can do exactly what this does. Not a version of it. the exact same thing. Basically, it. And a lot of people just cannot wrap their head around the fact that that's how technology works and what it allows. So they discount the risk.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of the, just real quick, some of the implications? Because there was just a case a couple, or I forgot how long ago it was, where a school was held ransom for like their backend software, and like a school in New York had to pay. Like, do you want to explain? Like, I think those stories are just interesting. If you want to go,
look at the city of Oakland right now. Yeah. The city of Oakland is not operating like society has a real problem if they do not take this stuff seriously. But yeah, you can have like a full system like completely compromised and held, under ransom. It's extortion. And so security is made up of kind of three things: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So like if you impact any of those three things, that's a cybersecurity concern. Confidentiality being like, hey, is the information I shared not known by people who aren't supposed to know it? Integrity, is the information actually what it's supposed to be? And availability is pretty straightforward. Can I actually get to it? The bad guys have honed in on the fact that like, all right, so you have my social security number. Oh, well, like people have kind of don't really care. Right. But if you shut down 911 in a city, people care.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So
you want to talk about TikTok maybe?
Yeah. Interesting, because
like you can, if you look me up online and TikTok, like I've done national media and everybody and just talking about this kind of quite a bit. But yeah, take this away, everybody. It's not funny cat videos, right? Like it is not funny cat videos. There is an entertainment value to it, right? I used to have TikTok. Like I thought it was hilarious. There's some cool stuff. I didn't try to learn the dances. Like there's no way. I do not. But if you look at it as entertainment value, purely as entertainment value, you're not thinking about what could be, right? And maybe you are those types of people who are like, oh, it's just my social security number. Well, like that can lead to someone opening up a credit card in your name and running up a bill. And then when you go to get your house, you learn that you can't because that happened. Like there are lifestyle ramifications to not taking this stuff seriously. So TikTok, right, from my aspect, what I've been talking about is it's a national security threat to the US, plainly because the Chinese Communist Party own this company called ByteDance, and ByteDance owns the TikTok application. Chinese Communist Party has inroads and a seat and ownership at ByteDance, okay? So everyone's always like, oh, well, isn't TikTok just like Facebook and everything else? And it's like, the US government doesn't own a part of Facebook, right? It's different. The US government also doesn't have national viewpoints and an approach to global kind of, operations, anything else, the same way China does. So the real problem is twofold, right? Chinese Communist Party has access to be able to influence and control the company that owns the app. The real problem is the app itself. Like when you install it on your phone, you are granting it a ton of information. And being somebody who's former DoD, this is the kind of stuff that I'm like, God, I don't really want anybody to have this. Things like my exact whereabouts at all times. The other applications that are running on my phone. Like, would either of you right now be super comfortable listing off in alphabetical order all the apps that are currently installed on your phone? Would be there any application on there that you would say, maybe I don't want to tell the world that I use that application? Think about that. TikTok has that access. It has access to what networks you're on, which means whenever you go to a friend's house, your phone is trying to get on their Wi-Fi, whether you know the password or not. It has access to all your Bluetooth connections, which means whenever you're around another device that's running Bluetooth, and most are, it's trying to access them, whether it can and it's authorized or not. It's allowed to basically go like, hey, I'm trying to connect to a Bluetooth. Well, I don't have access to you. Goodbye. But it starts collecting all that information, which means you can start figuring out where you are. Where do you usually hang out? For how long? What are you doing? Who else are you around? Who else are you talking to? You start profiling people and really trying to figure out like quite a bit about them. You can learn quite a bit about them without actually having to read their email or read their text messages. Just all the metadata that exists around you, you can put together a whole lot of information. And this is the kicker, and I'll end on this. And this is the scariest part. We have to remember that the Chinese country, the country of China, right, and every dynasty have already existed and been the pinnacle of human and civil society. They have already peaked, right? They are down and now they can go back up. They are playing an entirely different game than everyone else. They can play the long game. They can wait 20 years, which means when all of you are 20 years older from now and you're trying to get a job or you're an executive or you try to go work for the government and you were using applications like this now, they have everything about you that they need to coerce you 20 years from now into doing what they need. That's the thing I'm worried about. It's not about today. It's about tomorrow. That's the real problem because they will and can play the long game.
Wow.
And it's when you think about like, okay, TikTok has, just my information, whatever, they know where I am, but it's like TikTok is one of the largest social media apps. I think they have upwards of 1 billion users. So when you think about like the long-term implications and like the volume and the database that they have, do you think that's what are like the worst? Do you think that is the worst case scenario? Like what else could they do with that information?
I mean, it's advertising and reverse advertising on a mass scale, right? They're showing people in the United States an entirely different algorithm than they are in China and Europe and APAC, right? So, which means that they can influence, your thinking. Remember this, like it takes 6 to 8 months to turn an action into a learned behavior for people. Psychology will tell you that. So if you've got 8 months of seeing an image or a thought or a concept and it's being reintroduced to you over time, within 8 months, if you're susceptible, you will start seeing, oh man, you know what? I do kind of believe what that is saying. Man, yeah, maybe so-and-so is a bad person. Maybe so-and-so is a good person. Like it's all a long game.
Yeah. Does your daughter have TikTok?
Nope.
Do you think TikTok's going to get banned and then we can wrap things up?
I don't know if it'll get banned. I think the only way, Congress can definitely come out and do some stuff. The U.S. federal space can definitely do it and like ban it from government, devices. But for them to go ahead and say like all U.S. citizens can't use it, like they would need to literally get into Google and Apple, make both of those stores, remove it from the stores, and then also implement some other controls. I just don't see them doing that. So we'll see. That one's gonna be a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, an interesting perspective that maybe you might not have heard, but we're kind of on like the creator side, and we have a TikTok with 1 million followers on it. And it's like, as far as, TikTok has been a huge revenue source, and we know a bunch of other creators where they like TikTok like is their bread and butter.
Yeah.
So it's like for them, they like TikTok's their life. Like if TikTok goes, that's their living. Like they don't have a social media platform. I mean, obviously like it all transfer to other, like the volume will go somewhere. It's not just going to disappear entirely,
right.
But for a lot of like, especially like younger generations, TikTok is huge as far as like their economy and like
it's going to do the same thing that Facebook did, right? Facebook broke at some point, right? And people started not using it, right? Their ads went down, revenue went down. So, if you are a creator, and look, I have a YouTube channel, like I post quite a bit, like I'm constantly out, but I'm predominantly on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Like I tried to like bridge myself across like those areas, spread out your risk. If you go all in on one platform, you better hope that platform exists for a long time. Ask anybody who went all in on Vine.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that. You can't go all in on one platform. You have to spread your message out across a couple places because you don't know. And don't even think about just like, is the company going to be around? Does the algorithm change? And now your content isn't as big over here, but your content could be bigger over here. Well, now you got to restart. You should be doing it kind of across all platforms, reduce your risk, spread your risk across, kind of like your portfolio, right? It's like, all my stock's not in energy. Roll the dice on that one. Good God. Like you gotta kind of diversify your social media, presence.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's actually great advice.
Well, all right, Brian. CEO of Side Channel and social media consultant.
It's my next job.
That's awesome, Brian. Thank you for the great advice. This has been an awesome podcast. I've really enjoyed it. We hope you guys did enjoy, and we can go ahead and wrap things up here.
Awesome. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
All right. Awesome, guys. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Brian.
See you. Brian, don't hang up.
See you, everyone.